either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad. Feels a bit like the calm before the holiday storm this week. Numbers down a little bit, but still some flicks to talk about, both for the big screen and for streaming. So let's get at it. Welcome. This is the Screening Room Podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from madwolf.com. That's MADDWOLF. Speaking of the holidays, let's start with a comedy. After Santa Claus, codename Red One, is kidnapped, the North Pole's head of security must team up with the world's most infamous bounty hunter in a globetrotting, action-packed mission to save Christmas. It's Red One.
There is much in here that is not of the natural world. Who's that? Krampus.
We need to prepare for the possibility of no Christmas.
There's worse ways to go out than trying to save Santa Claus. We got snowmen! That was so disturbing.
Well, I guess not just comedy. They're going for action comedy for this one. Not very funny, not enough action. This was just a big disappointment that turns boring pretty darn fast. And it starts with, though, the casting. When I saw the trailer, you got J.K. Simmons as a
jacked up Santa Claus.
Super cool. I like that.
Oh, yeah. We were both excited about that for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of good names in the cast. And the director is Jake Kasdan. Walk Hard, Dewey Cox, love it.
Yeah.
Jumanji, The Next Level, which I liked.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the writing team. It's Chris Morgan, Hiram Garcia. They've worked on some of the Furious movies, Fast and Furious movies, and Jumanji movies. But it turns into a slog really, really quickly. As you heard in the synopsis, Santa Claus gets kidnapped, and his head of security, Dwayne Johnson, has already informed him before this happened that this is going to be his last go-round, his last midnight ride, because finally, after all this time, the naughty listers have finally eclipsed the nice listers. There's more naughty than nice, and Dwayne, whose character name is Callum Drift.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Callum Drift. Secret agent. No, he's head of security, and, it's kind of sort of like a secret agent for the North Pole. But anyway, he's disillusioned. He can't take it anymore. So one more ride, one more heist. It's always one more. And then they pull him back in because Santa gets kidnapped. And one of the ways that his boss, Dwayne's boss, played by Lucy Liu, has to go after getting Santa back is by bringing in this master tracker, Jack O'Malley,
who also happens to be a lifelong naughty lister.
He's a naughty lister. We see in a prologue early on that even as a kid, he never believed in Santa Claus, jaded from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got this built-in, and he's a naughty lister, but he's very good at tracking people, and so they look the other way on his naughtiness and team him up with Callum, Dwayne Johnson. And, of course, they do look at each other at one point, and Dwayne says, "Let's save Christmas." And right there, that could have been a self-aware wink-wink nod to what they're sort of spoofing, but there's no fun in this movie.
No.
There's just not. And it's so disappointing because it's 2 hours, and it starts to feel like 3 hours really, really quickly. Any bit of action, any bit of momentum has its knees cut out by all this exposition. There's so much Santa Claus mythology to talk about. And
why?
I know. And to try to give us this backstory about what is going to happen later and how the characters that are introduced later all come together. And also there's plenty of acronyms. Like corporate, like Santa Claus and the North Pole are a company, and they throw about all these acronyms, and so we have to know what they mean. One is enough, I guess, maybe. It's sort of cute, but not really. And all of it just sucks all the fun out of everything about this movie. The hokey CGI doesn't help. I mean, it's hokey. It really is. And I get it. They're trying to world build with these creatures on the North Pole and these abominable snowmen and these giant elves and things like that. And then you have
Krampus.
Krampus, we'll get to that. And then you have effects where Dwayne Johnson's character is able to do that sort of like an Ant-Man thing, like in the middle of a fight, just become really small. and then still have strength. Okay, we don't know how he gets that power, but he gets it. And then there's a scene where he does that, and then he's whipped around by this monster. And it looks bad.
Yeah,
it looks bad. So there's a lot working against it here, and even that I could look the other way if it was fun.
Yeah,
it's not fun. J.K. Simmons is fun.
Yeah.
And that Santa Claus is fun. And then you've got Mrs. Claus, played by Bonnie Hunt. Love that.
Yes.
But all of that goes away quickly because once Santa is kidnapped, he's
not in the movie.
Right. And then you've got the Rock and Chris Evans show, both very likable characters. But here, the Rock, his treatment of the character is played ultra straight, versus the smartass of Chris Evans, and it both seem forced, and the chemistry just isn't there.
Right. No.
It just isn't there, like between someone, say, like The Rock and Jason Statham, who work well together, or The Rock and Kevin Hart. That's great.
Yeah.
Nothing against Chris Evans.
No.
I mean, I like him. It just doesn't work here.
No.
And then that's before we even get to the evil Christmas witch.
Mm-hmm.
Played by Kiernan Shipka.
Who we love.
Yes. It's great to see her. But that's really thrown into this already overstuffed narrative before we get to her. And then you bring in Krampus.
Yeah.
Who's played by Christopher Hivju, who you know his face. He's in Game of Thrones. He was in Force Majeure back in the day.
Oh, yeah,
a lot of commercials. That guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's buried under a ton of makeup. But I'm always interested in Krampus.
Oh, yes.
But they've got
we love Krampus.
They've got a bunch of mythological backstory here that might surprise you. And so all of it is just overstuffed at the end, and it never just gets up and running.
No.
There's always something else to explain. And then even at the end, when Santa does come back, all right, it rallies a little bit. They go out of the way to try to explain to you how Santa is able to get all over the globe in one night. We've been down that road. We've been down that road. And also it has to get to the requisite Christmas lessons of big heart and goodwill and turning Dwayne Johnson back to having faith in fellow man and all that. I get that. It's a Christmas movie.
Right.
But by then, you're just, isn't this over yet?
And
Let's
can't
go.
we just, if we want to see Santa Claus get kidnapped, can't we just watch A Nightmare Before Christmas again? I mean, we're going to anyway.
Right, yeah. So it starts out pretty promising, I think, in the early going with those Santa, and then it just goes off the rails very quickly. And there's just no joy here,
None.
no fun at
No.
all. And for this type
No.
of premise for a holiday movie, you've got to have some, especially if you're going to try to take the family and going to try to take the kids. I think they will be bored out of their minds.
Yes.
And it is, it's rated PG-13, so they're going for the families. But
Plus,
no,
it's a full 2 hours.
it is a full 2 hours, yeah. So really disappointed with Red 1 in the theaters now. Well, let's turn to a much better consideration for this weekend at the movies. A buddy comedy, Mismatched Cousins, reunite for a tour through Poland to honor their beloved grandmother. The adventure takes a turn when the odd couple's old tensions resurface against the backdrop of their family history. It's called A Real Pain.
We stay moving, we stay light, we stay agile. Yeah. The conductor's gonna come through taking tickets. We tell him we're going to the bathroom.
Bathroom.
He gets to the back of the train, he's gonna start heading towards the front looking for stragglers.
Sorry, we're the stragglers?
Yeah, by the time he gets to the front, the train's gonna be in the station and we're home free.
This is so fucking stupid. Tickets are probably like $12.
That's the principle of the thing. We shouldn't have to pay for train tickets in Poland. This is our country.
No, it's not. It was our country. They kicked us out because they thought we were cheap.
What the flying fuck, man?
I'm so
Why
sorry.
would you do
Fuck,
that?
you're like red.
Yeah, because you fucking slapped me in the face.
This one is written, directed, and co-stars Jesse Eisenberg.
Impressive.
In terms of writing, this is one of the sharpest, most well-put-together scripts I've seen this year. And his direction is really, really good. It's very assured. For me, I don't think his acting has ever been more on point. He's not a guy with a massive amount of range.
Right.
And he just really seems to understand this character. But I think, as I said earlier today, as a director, what he does most effectively is let Kieran Culkin steal this movie.
And he does. Now, this is the second feature for Jesse Eisenberg as a writer-director. He did When You Finish Saving the World a couple of years ago. But yeah, very, very talented. And you're right. I'm sure when he was, I would guess, when he was writing both of these parts, these two main leads, he probably knew which one he was going to play early on.
Yeah.
And you're right. He lets Kieran Culkin take this and he just steals it, as the script intends for him to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because these two cousins, they're traveling, as the synopsis says there, to Poland, and they're going to take a tour through some very emotional, historical landmarks in Poland with concentration camps, and then they want to go visit where their grandmother used to live. And you can tell that especially Kieran Culkin's character was very, very close to the grandmother.
Right.
Very close. So he oscillates between being very emotional and then being such a real pain.
Yeah.
Obnoxious in some instances, because they're going with a tour group.
Yeah.
And so you've got some other members there that they're going to spend a lot of time with. And right away, Kieran Culkin's character is he's just dropping F-bombs all over the place. He's got a foul mouth, and okay, we're all adults here, but it's just one of those guys that a brand new person that you meet might go, what's with this guy?
Yeah.
But then he'll turn around and endear himself to you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating character. And, he's such a wild card. And so Eisenberg, who plays Dave, he's the much more restrained, calm, doesn't want to upset anybody,
right. Right.
and the two of them make such a good odd couple. But the other thing that they do really well is that their tensions between each other and the way this is written, they feel like family. They feel like, it's like they manipulate each other in certain ways. It feels like this has been going on. These are the same buttons that these guys have been pushing at each other for the last 30 years.
Yeah, Kieran Culkin's character is named Benji, if we didn't mention that. Yeah, it certainly seems like, and this is a testament to how good the script is, it seems like Jesse Eisenberg probably based these two people on people that he knows.
Yeah.
Because they're so lived in,
and
they're
really
so
are.
fleshed out. You're right. You can feel the fact that these guys grew up together.
Yep.
They are family. They consider themselves family. In fact, at one point they say, we're more like brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they can push some buttons.
Oh yeah, they can. And it's Kieran Culkin. I mean, the way because I feel like on paper this guy could have been just irredeemable. And then it's not just the way he brings him around, but the way the other minor characters come around to him feels like, I don't know, it's so fresh and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, though, is that in terms of the script, a lot of the film is spent with these two really smart, funny people riffing on each other, and that's enjoyable, too.
Yeah, it is. You also get a Jennifer Grey sighting.
Yeah,
she's one
great.
of the tour members.
Mm-hmm.
She is great. The interplay between everybody is great. The dialogue is sharp. The acting, and then of course, considering where they're going to go for their tour, it gets very emotional.
It really does.
Very emotional. And there's a very interesting scene as well when the two, David and Benji, finally do find where their grandmother was living. Something sort of just odd happens with a couple of neighbors that I thought was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And just one of those choices where it just feels very intimate. It doesn't feel like anything you'd expect. It feels real.
Yeah,
it
it
feels
does.
very authentic.
Yeah, the whole film does. It really does.
Yeah, it's really well done. And Jesse Eisenberg, in just his second feature here, establishing himself as a writer-director of some serious talent. And I expect this to we're in award season now, pretty much.
Yeah.
I expect this to get some consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if Kieran Culkin gets some supporting actor consideration.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
the script. Yeah, the script.
Yeah, very much so. It's really worth checking out, and it's in theaters now. It's called Real Pain. We'll stay in theaters for a drama. Bailey lives with her brother Hunter and her father Bug, who raises them alone in a squat in northern Kent. Bug doesn't have much time to devote to them. Bailey looks for attention and adventure elsewhere in Bird.
I'm Bird. Who are you?
It's none of your business. I don't care about your dream.
What do you mean you don't care about my dream? You don't care who you love. You're used to sorting it, aren't you? Taking care of things yourself. You don't care who you love. It's beautiful, isn't it?
What is?
The day. Who you love.
This is from writer-director Andrea Arnold, and her movies are not like anybody else's movies. And Bird is not really like her movies. Yeah.
Fish Tank, and then what's the one I'm forgetting?
American Honey.
Yes. So if you've seen those, you kind of know a little bit what to expect.
Yeah, that she tells films from very authentically from the perspective of kind of outsider adolescent girls and the dangers of their lives and sort of the adventures that they can get into. And she also, she finds beauty and joy in places that other filmmakers really wouldn't. What she does in this movie is really tip into kind of magical realism, which I've not seen her do before. And whether or not you like this movie has a lot to do with how well you embrace that.
You know what that reminds me of? Because you said the exact same thing about The Love Lies Bleeding.
Yes.
It's how that third act hits you is going to. And there's been a few movies like that here recently. Where it goes in the end is going to really color how this movie leaves you.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely is. So Bailey is growing up with her dad is Barry Keoghan, who's just brilliant, absolutely wonderful in this movie. And he is going to remarry. So there's a stepmother, there's a younger daughter, sort of a little princess, and there is a drug toad. So there's a magic toad. So she actually does. She peppers the whole film with concepts that are familiar in a fairy tale. And Bailey doesn't want any part of this. And, Bug, he feels like he's going to be able to pay for all this with this drug toad, because if they listen to earnest music, then it slimes, and then they can sell that high to people and make all their money.
That was such a weird thing. Like, how did they figure this out?
Yeah.
Oh, the toad likes listening to earnest music, and then it will secrete the slime that you can get high off of.
It likes Coldplay.
Yeah.
That's what it likes. It likes Coldplay.
I want to see the research on this.
That's
some hard
right.
data.
But then on the other side of town, Bailey's mother and her three step-siblings, or half-siblings through her mother, they live with an abusive, horrible boyfriend. But somewhere in between these two maybe not ideal living situations is a big field where Bailey finds a new friend named Bird. And he's a very, very odd person, and like really, really odd. And for a while, she sort of follows him at a distance just out of curiosity. And then you see that she kind of feels maybe protective of him. And then maybe eventually she thinks he can become something, or that maybe he is. So the whole thing, it really does kind of spin this fairy tale story. But the performances and the environment, they're so authentic. They're so gritty and real, and in environments where you're not used to spending your time. It's not like any other movie that I've seen. But Andrea Arnold, she really does find bright color and love and beauty in the most unusual places. And I think in the end, that's what you feel.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned Barry Keoghan. Bird is played by Franz Rogowski. And then Bailey, I believe, a newcomer?
Yes, this is her first film.
Nikia Adams
and
is Bailey.
And she's magnificent. And she's also in, I think, maybe every single frame of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she carries the entire movie, and she does a magnificent job.
But you're right, Andrea Arnold, looking at Fish Tank and looking at American Honey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, young. This character may be the youngest.
Yes,
the other two were
12.
teens, I think.
Yeah.
So even so, just around that age, and another really, really stellar outing from Andrea Arnold and a great cast. And this one is in the theaters now, and it's called Bird. Let's go to Netflix for a music documentary. He had one chance to show the world he was still the king of rock and roll. It's the story behind Elvis's triumphant 1968 comeback special called Return of the King, the fall and rise of Elvis Presley.
He thought, if this is ending, I want to end as the Elvis I want to be, not the Elvis they want me to be.
902.
The 68 comeback special, it's sort of the first step towards control of his own destiny.
Here's Elvis Presley.
He was very nervous because he hadn't done anything like that before.
Ain't no room around here for guitar.
He comes out, and he's the best-looking guy on the planet.
It was the first time I saw him perform, and I went, whoa.
I felt like my team came back, and they're winning again.
No, wait a minute. There's something wrong with my lip.
What you see that night is the one time Elvis decided to be who he wanted to be, for himself. Elvis took Elvis to the next level.
I was really interested in seeing this, and I was pretty disappointed because even though the description of it is about the 68 comeback special, it takes a full hour to get there.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the full title, it says The Fall and Rise of Elvis Presley, and it spends the first full hour, talking about the fall and going over material that I think really anybody that's interested in this is already going to know.
Right.
And that's, by the time it was 1968, his career was in the dumper because he had made all these inane movies that just, even though early on they made a lot of money and some of the soundtracks sold a lot, by the later 60s they were not. And he hadn't performed live in years. And so he needed this badly for his career. And of course, as most people know, it did the trick. And it was a great stepping stone to the legend of Elvis. But so that's what I wanted. I was expecting to get really inside that.
Yeah.
The nuts and bolts of the actual special and the problems and how it came to be and all that. And you get a little bit of that. You get some outtakes of him messing up and, getting frustrated, behind the scenes stuff, but not nearly enough. So much of the time is spent on material that most people are already going to be pretty familiar with. And even so, you could have covered it. You really could have covered it sufficiently in a half hour tops. But they maybe just didn't have the material to cover the actual 68 special, which I think is the draw here as far as interest goes. The director is Jason Heyer, who really comes out of sports documentaries. He was one of the directors on that Last Dance, that ESPN documentary about Chicago Bulls, and some other things. So moves over here, and you get some nice archival footage. You do get current interviews with Priscilla Presley and a couple of other members of the inner circle.
Bruce?
You get Bruce. Looks like a pretty recent interview. Yeah, and some others. A lot with Billy Corgan, too. Billy Corgan,
yeah.
Massive Elvis fan. So he's included there. So definitely some recent interviews, as I say, not only Priscilla, but a couple other members of the, quote, Memphis Mafia that are still living. But when it gets to the actual special, I think that really comes up wanting. It doesn't even go into things, especially most Elvis fans are going to know that the special culminated with that big performance of If I Can Dream. And there was a big, at least some sort of argument. One of the times that Elvis, according to the legend, stood up to the Colonel because the Colonel did not want him to record that song because it was, quote unquote, a protest song. But in this case, he stood his ground and recorded it anyway. And of course, that was a win for him. It doesn't go into any of that. It shows you a little bit of the performance, which was great, and you get that, but it doesn't go into any of the real backstory that you expect and hope a documentary like this would do. So I thought this was overall a disappointment. If you don't know anything about Elvis's fall, I guess the first hour might interest you more, but boy, not me. And this was one that I was really interested in and end up being disappointed by, and it's on Netflix now, called Return of the King, The Fall and Rise of Elvis Presley. Next up is a documentary that is finally making its way to Prime this weekend. The curiously optimistic story of Doug Butler, a hardscrabble Vermont dairy farmer who risks losing the only home he's ever known to chase his dreams of dog mushing in Alaska. It's called Underdog.
Okay, the longest time in my life that I left the farm, I think it was 5 nights. It was September 20th, 1975. No, don't die, come on. And I'll be paying every week to 2 weeks, I don't know how much, to get us caught up. Poor girl. You gotta make a decision somewhere along whether you want to sell the place. I'm having a toast to all you folks. The farm boy made it! You know what? My theory is on no and no. Next opportunity. Here we go.
You know, this is just such a charming film.
It is, because it gets you inside the life of this guy who's an underdog in a sport that's is pretty much an underdog in the sporting world, and he lives a life, his vocation, a family farmer is an underdog.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of, the title sounds sort of generic, but it really fits in a lot of different ways. And this guy, Doug Butler, I mean, he's a hoot. The director is Tommy Hyde, and you really don't know how they cross paths, because this is one of those really immersive documentaries.
Yes.
There's no, you're just dropped on the farm. There's no sort of leading narration. There's no sort of text
Talking
or
heads.
anything. Right. You're just, here it is. This is the life he leads in Middlebury, Vermont, which is actually only about 30 or 40 minutes away from where your sister lives.
Exactly.
And we've visited there several times, and it's a different lifestyle. It really is. These Vermonters, as we call them, they're a different breed, and he certainly is one. And he's got this dairy farm that he's been tending. He's been in his family for decades, and you can tell that he's struggling to hold on to it with the debts. And bankers are talking about maybe he should think about selling, and of course he doesn't want to do this. And even when he has to deal with all those things, his mind is on his 22 dogs. Each one of them has a name, and he knows them all.
Yep.
And he takes them out sledding around Vermont, and he just freaking loves it. You cannot the enthusiasm he has for this mushing is just palpable.
Yeah.
He's so excited. And even that is not enough, because in the back of his mind for about 30 years, he's had this dream of taking the dogs from Vermont to Alaska to participate in this big race. And that's a long drive. And we're along for the ride when he finally does it. And you feel lucky to be there as he finally does it. And we don't think he's going to win the race, but you cannot ignore the effects that he has on other people just by his sheer exuberance and his love, even though he's dealing with all these problems, because he also has health problems. His doctor has warned him about some things, and we're there in the office. So all this is going on, but he will not be denied. And you can't help but smile knowing this guy. He's just, like I said, he's a hoot. He's just a hoot. He gets in the truck with these dogs, and he drives across the country, and he's jamming to his classic rock, and he's just, yeah, we're doing this. And you just love the guy, and you cannot deny his spirit. So I don't want to spoil anything. If you do see the movie, then read up on it a little bit, read up on the character, because this actually goes back a few years.
Yeah.
You'll notice in the movie that many of these events, about 2017, 2018 is when it was filmed. And so finally getting a wide streaming release. But check it out. It's only about 82 minutes long, so it won't take long. But man, you'll be glad you knew this guy.
Yes.
He is something. It's writer-director Tommy Hyde with the movie Underdog, out now.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Back in the lobby, checking in with Daniel Baldwin, a.k.a. the Schlocketeer, for all the moving and shaking with the studios. What's moving, what's shaking?
Well, first off, Transformers 1 is now available to stream on Paramount+, and Jason Reitman's Saturday Night is now available in VOD. So there's a family double feature for you.
That's a good one. That's a fun one.
And then Blumhouse's techno-horror film Afraid will hit Netflix on November 28th.
Oh,
and
yeah. I almost forgot that existed. AI.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I suspect based on the box office returns that most people will be catching it on Netflix and not in
probably.
theaters. Mubi will release their period piece drama, The Girl with the Needle, in theaters on December 6th. And then moving into 2025, Amazon MGM has pushed back the release of David Ayer's Jason Statham starring action flick Levon's Trade. It'll now open in theaters on March 28th. Disney has set an April 11th theatrical release for their Rami Malek starring spy thriller, The Amateur.
Oh, I just saw a trailer for that.
Looks good.
He's got
Amazon.
He's got a particular set of skills.
Yes, he does. There's a lot of that going around. Speaking of which, Amazon MGM will release The Accountant 2 in theaters on April 25th. Ben Affleck, John Bernthal, and J.K. Simmons are all back. Same director back as well.
Oh, okay. That's been a few years, too.
Yeah, it has.
It's been a hot minute. And then Sony has set an April 25th theatrical release for David F. Sandberg's new film Until Dawn, which is an adaptation of the popular horror video game by the same name. And speaking of trailers that just dropped this past week, Paramount has finally released the new title for Mission Impossible 8. It is now named Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and will arrive in theaters on May 23rd. It is expected to be the last Mission Impossible movie for a while because Tom Cruise is going to be focusing on other projects for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I saw that trailer. It looked good. I mean, I liked the last one.
Yeah, I did too.
So did I.
Now they need to find a way to go back in time and fix the title for Edge of Tomorrow.
You know what? I didn't understand why Dead Reckoning Part 1 was a Part 1. Every single Mission Impossible movie is a cliffhanger. What is the point of pretending? You know what I mean? I'm glad they didn't go with Dead Reckoning Part 2.
Yeah, and that was a gradual thing, too, because it was called Part 1 in theaters, and then when it hit disc, it was just called Dead Reckoning. And then now, of course, the second half has its own title.
We'll see.
And, yeah, a couple more things from Disney here. First off, they have set a May 23rd theatrical release for their live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch.
Huh.
And, yeah, that was about my reaction as well. Disney has once again pulled the release date of Marvel's new adaptation of Blade, this time from its November 7th slot next year. Blade remains undated for now.
Jeez.
Yeah. But the good news is that they have instead given that November 7th date next year to Dan Trachtenberg's Predator Badlands.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
This will be a standalone entry and not a sequel to 2022's Prey, although there is a Prey 2 in the works. But this one will apparently be set in the future on a distant planet and have a Predator itself as the protagonist. That's all I've got for you this week.
Okay. Thanks as always. You can catch up with Daniel anytime on the socials at The Schlocketeer. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, well, looking ahead to next week, the quiet week's end, because a big one next week with the release of Wicked.
Oh, and also Gladiator 2.
Those are two big ones.
Those are some big ones.
It's sort of funny that why didn't one of them pick this week to go?
I don't know.
I don't know. But
I guess because it's Thanksgiving week and people that's when people go. I don't know.
Have they come up with a like a Barbenheimer name?
Wickidiator? I don't know.
Wickidiator.
I don't know.
Patent pending Wickidiator next week. Also one called Rita.
And Street Trash.
That's a remake?
It's
a sequel?
It's a sequel, technically, yes.
All right, Street Trash. Look it up. Whiteout.
The Shade.
And Armor. That is all next week. But what do you think about this week? Did you love Red One? Am I totally wrong? Let me know.
I bet you didn't.
Also A Real Pain, or maybe a bird of the Elvis documentary, Underdog. We always love to keep the conversation going. You can find us easily on the socials at Mad Wolf Columbus. Again, that's Mad with 2 Ds. And also the main website is madwolf.com. So enjoy the movies. Hope you're having a great start to the holiday season. Keep in touch if you can. Until next week, be well. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.